Um, Good evening. So this is I'm going to try and make this as interactive as possible because it's the kind of topic where it's really important to hear from different people and how they kind of meet this challenge. I think it's really a challenge that we all face on a very regular basis is how we budget and how we stay on top of our finances and kind of leading from the learning we did before or the emotions of finance, which was really the emotional side of kind of taking control. And we're now kind of this is the very much getting into the kind of meat and potatoes and practical side of how do we how do we have find techniques that can help us with these different areas. So budgeting, credit. We're going to look at all of that. Budgeting is, I think, one of the kind of unsung heroes, and it really is probably the most important topic. And I say this about a bunch of things, but budgeting is so fundamental to your business success in a number of ways. So, you know, if you budget well and you budget effectively, that skill just feeds straight into the business. And budgeting, you should think of it really as a complex skill as opposed to something that, every once in a while I look at my written personal budget and, I maybe sort of make a few changes every quarter. It's something that you should devote, a fair amount of time each month towards getting a better and better at it, and making sure that your budgeting is as accurate as it can possibly be and not only reflects kind of the current day, but then also can start looking forward into the future. So it's so fundamentally important. I'm going to kind of throw this back out to everybody. Who here feels like they are all over their budget? They're 100%, the best budgeter ever. They refer to their budget every couple of weeks at least. Anybody feel like they've got budgeting down to an art? Okay. Um, um, No, no, not does that, or you can put in the chat box, or you can raise your hand or anything. Anybody feel that way about it, or are we still on this learning journey together and feel like there's room for improvement? Um, does anybody, not budget at all, or feel like they really, really just don't make the time to budget and don't have to answer this? Kind of going on the other end of the spectrum. Room for improvement. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, me too. Me too. You know, I I feel like there's always room for improvement when you're budgeting because it's so complex. It's constantly changing. So my hope for the end of this session is that I can give you a few tools and just kind of the inspiration to either look at your existing budget, update it, refine it, and start kind of making time to do it regularly. Or if you haven't ever budgeted before, I'll try and give you the kind of starting point for how to do it and how to begin, because it's not something that happens overnight. It's something that just is constant. Um, my bills participate in the Hunger Games. Yeah, I feel that. I think we all room for improvement. Still budgeting a little at a time. Sorry, on you don't budget at all. Still learning. Absolutely. I think that's how we all feel about budgeting, and it's something that is not. It's pretty stressful sometimes. We've just had a kid. We've bought a house. We've done a lot of work on the house. Our budget's a mess, or has been a mess, because of all these new expenses. Daycare has just started. Um, so we really had to take a really long look at our budget the last month or two and just figure out, like, where can we save, where can we cut back, because we've built up a bunch of credit card debt, as you do in these situations, and we need to start paying it down. So, and that process, and we'll talk more about in detail about kind of the processes to go through. um you know it's it's even if you know that you can't save a penny at the end of the month, you still know you can't. And it's, I think the very act of being able to just know where your finances are at any given point is very empowering. I think for everyone, the fear is, well, I don't even really know how much I'm spending every month. And it goes up and down, and then then an unexpected expense comes up and it just knocks me back. And that's, I think, how we all feel. um, but good budgeting, especially once you build up an emergency fund, that really is the beginning to taking much more control over your finances. So I'm going to put a presentation up. So I went on the FDIC's website. Tony, who normally presents this, she uses the same materials. So I went through, I looked at the presentation that they have, and I I cut out more than 50% of it because frankly it wasn't all relevant. Um, I've distilled it to, I think, what are the more important points for budgeting. So I'm gonna kind of go through the main elements of it. This is it's obviously it's self-evident, but it's really important, and it's going to be vary for everyone in this room depending on how their income is done. Hi, Jamie. Good to see you. So if you have a W-2 job and you have everything taken out from your gross income, then you already know your net, what your net income is, and that's your starting point for a budget. But if you have the business as well, or it's just full-time business and you're paying yourself out of the business, you're essentially, unless you're an employee of the business, which most people on this program are not yet, you're paying yourself as a 1099 contractor. And of course, that is a gross number. And there are things you need to take out of that, as we'll go on to see. And we all know what they are, and we don't like them. But they are unfortunately just a fact of life. So first things first is look at all the different income streams that you've got. If you have multiple income streams, a lot of people on the program do because they're working full-time, part-time jobs, and some have one, sometimes two businesses, sometimes an extra side hustle. So it's the first step is figuring out what that post-tax FICO income looks like, and getting that exact number. And so obviously the difference between gross and net we've talked about, and everyone knows this. It's gross is the top line number, but we're really concerned about net income for the purposes of budgeting because we got to make sure that we're factoring in deductions. A good rule of thumb, if you want to protect yourself from any nasty surprises, is when you pay yourself 1099, take 30% of that in gross income and put it in another account, and that's your deductions. That's going to be your taxes, your contributions, your FICA, all of that. Fun stuff that none of us like to pay, but unfortunately are just a fact of life. And so that's a kind of rule of thumb for most business owners. If you are paying yourself, take 30% off of that, put it to the side, put it into another account, and that's going to be your, what comes off, and that's what takes off to form your net income. So, just a little bit on kind of the different ways that we pay ourselves. Any questions on this so far?
I have a
Okay.
question.
Yes.
Will we be able to have a copy of this PowerPoint?
Yeah, I'm going to send this out with the recording.
Okay, thank
I'll
you.
I'll probably send that out tomorrow. So yeah, you'll get copies of every presentation I do. So or hopefully a facilitator does. Because this is only temporary, but it's good to facilitate as well. I think it's a skill set that I should probably be improving because I do enjoy it, and I sit in a lot of these, so I should be good at it by now. Okay, so this is pretty straightforward. You withhold more, you have less take-home pay. I'm not going to tell you exactly how much to withhold. That's up to you. I've said the 30%. That's usually a little more than needed. It's ultimately that's going to be your decision. But it's again, The alternative is, and all business owners do it, is they will sometimes undercount some income that's paid to themselves, and that happens, and we all do it, especially if there's cash, if it's cash in the business. And I worked in a cash pretty much only business for 4 years. I was here, and yeah, it's pretty standard to fudge those numbers a little bit. I'm not telling you to do that, but there's a lot of that. So I will leave that to your discretion. Main takeaway though is, try and make sure that when you're starting your budget, you are using whatever net income number is as close to the reality as possible. So I told you about, we all know 1099 and W2, but just to confirm, that's the two main ways that you're going to get paid. Pretty much every business, I was a 1099 at Flyte for a long time. It was only in 2022, I think, and no, actually January 2023 that I was able to pay myself with a W2. So I'm not that far ahead of a lot of the businesses on this program. So I've gone through it, and in terms of when to do it, there's a little bit of cost involved. It's really when you feel like the business, depending on what salary you want to pay yourself, it's when you feel like the business is in a strong enough position to be able to sustain that salary for at least 6 months, maybe longer, because it's a pain to have to then also go, remove that and go back to 1099. But it's more just, there is some startup cost involved, especially if you're working with like Gusto or another payroll provider. So that's the main thing. But there are big benefits also to being W2. If you're trying to get some kind of financing, auto loans, mortgages, lines of credit, banks much prefer regular W2 income, as many of you will know. Self-employment income can be a challenge to get financing for certain things. So that's worth bearing in mind if you longer term, you're looking to buy a home and you want to try and pay yourself in the business. W2 is going to be a lot more impactful in that process. Tracking income. So this is just, again, looking at the different sources of income. I talked about this earlier. I think seasonal is important. We work in a seasonal city for a lot of industries, especially if you're in travel, food and beverage. Most industries in the city are affected by the seasonality. What's really important is that you try and understand how that impacts your business. If your first year in business, try and look at comparable businesses, speak to them, and be prepared. Because some businesses, especially in the summer, really suffer, and that seems to be the death knell of a lot of businesses, is surviving the summer, especially if you're in food and beverage. But even most of the retail businesses that I work with, nobody wants to do pop-ups in the summer. It's hot as hell, so there's no pop-ups, so there's less revenue. So the summer for a lot of the pop-up retail businesses that I work with is really more a time of focusing on back office, trying to get marketing sorted out. It's really more of a kind of refocusing period as opposed to a sales period. So try and think about the seasonality of your business. When is it out? When is the time to get out there and hustle and sell? When is it time to step back? Look through the receipts, make sure that everything on the back office side is good, that you're tracking income and expenses correctly, that you're that you've got a good sales pipeline coming up, that you've got a good business plan, you're budgeting correctly, especially in the summer. That's when it's really important, is when that budget comes into play, because then you'll understand, okay, well, I know my net income is going to be lower in these months, so I need to either build up some savings leading up to it, or I need to cut back on expenses. So it's really important to understand the seasonal nature of your business, and adapt your budgets accordingly. So this just repeats the first point. Really important to understand your income. That is the first step to a budget. We're not, with any budget template you'll see, and I'll send you a link to a whole bunch of templates that you can use for budgets, where the maths is already done for you. All you need to do is put in the items and the amounts. They all start with the income. That'll be its top line. But then we get on to expenses, which is in some ways simple, and in other ways it's the part that is evolving much more quickly than the income, because there's often new expenses coming in and things are changing. So before I move on to expenses, does anyone have any feedback, questions on the income side of things? Okay, good. I hope I still have everyone listening in and haven't made everyone fall asleep yet. Doing my best. Don Tion, thank you. I can see you, so I know that you're still engaged. So it's feel very inspiring. Excellent. Expenses. Exactly the same thing. You have to really understand your expenses in order to budget effectively. So, obviously, what do people do with their money? Save, share it, spend it. There's the three main things we do. But, let's think about, so this is kind of how most people will organize their expenses when they're doing a budget. And you always start at the very top with needs. So for me, mortgage, that's number one. Got to pay that, or else I lose the house. Utilities, that comes next. Water, electricity. Then you start to get on to things like, internet, cell phone bill, groceries, stuff that you generally need to exist are at the very top, because those are the ones that are going to be the hardest to cut out. So that's typically how you'll see most budgets organized, is core stuff higher up. And then for me, I have a completely separate section, which is, I don't call it wants, I call it non-essential. Those are all the things that, right now we're cutting back on hugely. So, you're talking, online ordering, takeaway, restaurants, and all the fun stuff, unfortunately. But, in our situation, we just, we looked at the numbers and we're like, right, we can't eat out for a few months. And our grocery bill is going to be cut down, and no more Amazon, or at least like we can, do this much Amazon a month. So, it's not the most fun thing to do and to budget, but as I said, when you look through the previous months, and so what I do every month is I look through my previous bank statements and credit card statements, and I literally check. I have my credit card categorizes everything for me, so I can just flick through and I go, okay, how much should we really spend on groceries? How much should we spend on subscriptions? And I have every single subscription on our budget. So my wife and we just do a combined one. I have pretty much everything listed out that comes out of the account, because I want to be as accurate as possible. And it's just a good process to go to, in the sense that I found all kinds of things that I didn't know were on our credit card, shared credit card. We were paying for 2 subscriptions with the same TV service. I don't know how that happened. There's been some minor fraud on there that I've caught. There's all kinds of things. But unfortunately, the thing that we find the most is that everything adds up. Even when we've had months where like, oh, we didn't spend that much on takeout and Amazon. We did. We spent way more than we expected. So we now actually keep track. Even if any purchase we make, we literally have it in the budget. So, like, we'll put it down there and we'll kind of literally have the amount that we can spend, and we'll decide on whether it's a need, if it's something we absolutely need, or is it we take this down the road for a few months. Quite a lot of the time we realize, yeah, we don't really need this thing. It's just, we want it. So it's a good process to go through when you're doing a budget, and especially just continuously, just to be like, okay, it's yourself, your significant other, your husband or wife. Just think, okay, this is if you are really trying, if you're trying to save as much as possible, just think, do I really need that? It's helped a lot, and it's sometimes it's a bit frustrating, but frankly, with especially well, in our situation where we've moved house twice in 3 months and had spent a bunch of money on updating the house, there's not a huge amount left, and we have to pay back credit card debt, so we have to factor in. We decide, okay, we're going to pay down X thousand a month. That's top. That goes to the top of the line. Um, so so that's kind of how I'd organize. How the generally accepted way of organizing things is really kind of obviously income, either multiple sources or just your income, and then absolute obligations and needs, and then it's non-core, non-essential stuff that goes down next, and then you get to a bottom. The one thing I haven't talked about is saving. So a lot of people say put savings at the very top of the budget, right after income. We are right in our situation, we can't afford to save right now because we're still paying huge amounts of credit card debt. So we have prioritized at the top credit card, and savings is at the very bottom. And in a few months' time, hopefully, when credit card debt is down, we will prioritize savings. But what's good is that we know exactly to within probably around $15 now how much is coming out every month. Except if there's some kind of unexpected fund, but we have an emergency fund, and that's something we're going to talk about on Thursday. Is budgeting and preparing for an emergency. Those go hand in hand, and so we'll look at some best practice to try and kind of create that savings pile. And look, we're all I struggled to save for a really long time, especially when I was pedicaming. Flyte was just a glimmer in my eye, or I was still growing it with a laptop on a pedicab. I wasn't making a lot of money. It was really hard to put money away. So it's not always easy. But we'll talk about some more techniques for saving and what the best way of doing it is. And really the main thing for that is just you save what you can. It could be $5, 50. It's really, but it's important it's more about getting into the habit of saving, and even, getting into the habit of telling yourself, okay, well, we can't save this month, but we know we can save it in a few months' time. Any questions on what I just talked about,
I have
or
a quick
thoughts?
question.
Yeah, of course.
So how would you discuss prioritizing? So like I've heard before that if you have debt and you want to save, that you want to first pay off debt before you save. Are there any techniques where you can actually try to do both, or you alternate in order to accomplish both things?
Yeah, that's a good question. The first thing that you should prioritize is high interest debt. So if there's debt with a really high interest rate and a high balance, because often I work with people who have different credit cards, and some with higher interest and balances than others. Whatever you're paying more in interest on, get rid of that first, because that's just money going to the bank. Sorry, and then literally going to the bank's revenues, not yours. So I always say just get rid of that first, and then focus on the saving. I'd say, if you can try and do a little bit of both. It really depends exactly on how severe the debt is, but you really want to try and get rid of high interest debt. The other thing I recommend is, if you can, open up a 0% balance card, move it over to that and pay that down, and then you're no longer paying interest, or get a debt consolidation loan, and then that gives you a lower interest rate, and you have a consistent payment on that the whole time. So it kind of depends on the situation, but yeah, it's always important to get rid of get rid of debt. Any other questions? Yeah, and if there's anything specific that you wanted to look at, you don't want to discuss in this forum, you can talk with your mentor about it. We have literally 5 banks that we work with individuals who volunteer to help with budgeting, saving, credit building, very specifically those 3 areas. It's completely free. So if you want that and you think it'd be important to have someone outside of just the mentor who can just focus on budgeting, saving, and credit, we have a lot of resources on that front. So please don't be shy about asking for that from your mentor. Okay. We talked about tracking. So there's a lot of different best practices on this, but as I said, the one I think is best is at the end of the month, put in your calendar, block out an hour, and use that hour to go through your credit card statements, your bank statements, and look at what you spent, and then compare that to what you budgeted, and see where see where the differences are. Okay, if you're overspent in some area, or was that an unusual expense, or was it are you just under is this something you're underestimating? You underspend in an area, same thing. Okay, why was I overestimating this cost? And the more you do this, the better you get at it, and it becomes second nature. And then you really kind of begin to know in your head, okay, I can, I've underspent on these things this month. I know I can treat myself to this nice dinner or some clothes or whatever. And that very process is the establishment of control, where you are the one controlling your finances. You know that I've saved what I wanted to save as my goal this month. I've spent X amount, and I know exactly what it's going to look like, and I got there. So it's really important to track as much as you can and get it as accurate as possible, and that takes months, because again, you're making an estimation, and then you look at the actuals, and you go, okay, this is what I'm actually spending on. In my experience, and I think everyone does this, everyone underestimates how much they're spending on like going out, buying stuff online. Everyone I've worked with, and I'm like, give me a guess what you spent last month. It's usually like $100 or $200 below what they actually spent. It's pretty consistent. So, and usually those are the things that actually do have flexibility in being able to cut back on those. Does anyone have any techniques, budgeting wise, that they like that I haven't talked about that they'd like to share, or best practices, anything that they find is really useful when it comes to budgeting? I'd love to hear from you all. There's a pretty good group here, so I'd love to hear from people in the forum.
I can share. So this is Ramisha. When we were buying our house a couple of years ago, and I was not like I said, I was the one that made a comment about the Hunger Games. And for a long time, like, we didn't have Hunger Games, but with my recent job change, it's kind of returned back to that. But I wanted to use these sessions to kind of do a hard reset. So what our housing counselor counseled us to do was to have a couple of different accounts. So one was the bill account. So we added up all of our bills for the year, for each kind of category, and then we divided it by 12. And then we divided it by the number of pay periods that my husband and I had. And then we made sure that our direct deposits went to that account. Now, for dual household earners, sometimes money can be a point of contention, but what we did is we did a ratio. So at the time, our ratio wasn't as 50-50 as it is now, but basically whatever the ratio you have for your incomes, that was the ratio that you was expected to contribute to the household income. Some other people might split it a different way. They might say, you take this bill, I take that bill, but this is what worked for us. So we put all of that money, we have that money directly deposited into that bill account. And then we each have our own flex account. where like what lunch, gas, whatever comes out of those. And basically we had all of our bills set on auto pay. So you didn't have to worry about whether or not bills got paid because you had the account set up, the money was always going to be there. Where we have tripped up, and what I want to use as a reset is like we've had some significant changes, not only with the income that we are generating, but also like energy has skyrocketed. You know, the food cost has skyrocketed. Now Jason is paying for parking every day where he didn't have to pay for it, and we didn't necessarily talk about whether or not that should be a flex bill or in the budget. So just taking that time, like you're saying, maybe, I don't know if I can pull off monthly, but maybe bi-monthly at least. Oh, don't even get me started on homeowners insurance, because my mortgage now is probably almost 50% more than what it was when we first bought our house 5 years ago. And so, yeah, so those are the things that we have to take into account. But it was nice knowing that like I didn't have to worry about that. But at the same time, I did not it makes it, sometimes you forget to go check to make sure like your charges are the charges you're supposed to have. So I think finding a hybrid version where like, yes, we have the bill account and we have money that just automatically goes there, while saying we're going to intentionally calendar out checkpoints to review that budget, is what I'm hoping to corral us into doing.
That's fantastic. And I'm glad you're using this program as an opportunity to make that kind of hard reset, as you say. And, Liz and I did exactly the same thing, pretty recently, because we've just been so busy with the kiddo and everything going on the last 6 months. We did not intend to both buy and renovate a house with Liz being pregnant and then having an infant at the same time. God just decided he wanted to throw us an extra curveball and see how he handled it. So, but we've made it through, I think, the hardest part, and our budget was completely shattered, and we did do something similar to what you're doing. I think that's a very good point about splitting if you're a dual income household, and this is not how everyone should do it, but we do exactly the proportional. Depending on, we look at after tax income, and we do a ratio. So pretty much all of the core stuff, all of the obligations, the necessities, we split. Well, we put those on a joint credit card, and then I pay. We pay whatever's proportional of the credit card bill. So if it's 50-50 in terms of our income, we both pay half the bill. Same with all the stuff that's not on the credit card. So we try and keep it as fair as possible, because it's the way it feels right for us. Yes. So I can just quickly pull up. This is just like I put together an example of kind of how my budget looks, so I can pull up, and we'll just have a quick look at that, and just this is just kind of how most budgets look. But yeah, you can see. 1 second. Okay. Oops. I didn't have it open. I probably should have. All right. So sharing that now. Sorry about the delay. And I can share this template, and I can also share a website that has like hundreds of templates. There's so many templates here. These numbers are not actually real, but just put some hypothetical numbers in here. But this is like kind of the template that I put together for us. So I start with after tax income because gross is gross. The real money is after tax. So I put just this is after tax income as a hypothetical. Mortgage, I start with mortgage, daycare, internet, electricity, water, baby stuff, gas. We share one car, and Liz goes into the office a few days a week, but we don't do a lot of driving. Groceries. Some of these numbers are accurate. I guess that's what we spend on groceries a month. I guess I know how much we spend on groceries a month, but that was the last couple of months on average. Online purchases. So this is the non-essential. This is the budget. So this is what we're trying to stick to. So there's an allowance for things like takeout is, that's a little bit. That's usually going to pick up food because getting stuff delivered is a criminal ripoff and is just horrendous. And don't do it unless you absolutely have to, because it's just insane how inflated that has become. It used to be reasonable to get takeout, but not anymore. Going out, $0. We just don't go out anymore. Unfortunately, it's easier to not go out with a baby because it's a logistical challenge to do that anyway. But that was the quickest way we could just like save a lot of money. Because it's expensive. Meals, even if you feel like you're going for like a relatively cheap meal, it ends up being like $50 a head with tips. So that was a quick way. And then, we wanted to put a little money away for traveling. I'm going to my sister's wedding next month, so I budget for that. No cleaner right now. Subscriptions. So this is, you get the full whammy. You can see. So these are all the subscriptions that we both have and who pays for them. What card they're on, and then we add them up so we can kind of change it. So that feeds into here, and then you get a total for those. So you can see this is net essential, and then you get net non-essential, and then there's some costs that she pays. So I pay and she pays that we factor in as well. And I also put percentages of how much how much each one represents in the budget. So these are more hypothetical numbers. You can see I spend a lot on hair and beauty a month. That represents getting a $50 haircut every 3 months. So yeah, it's tight, but you can see here. Look, I mean, we're only putting $50 right now into saving, and we're not investing right now. And that's not a ton, but that's kind of what we can do, while still being able to, live a tiny bit and do some enjoyable things. That's it. But we know, and what I like about this is, I can, if the income number goes up, if you find some additional income sources, Liz is going to, doing some freelance work, so that can increase it. I can very quickly put in, you just basically can say, okay, well, we get $1,000 more a month, and okay, what does that look like? And our mortgage is gonna, I think, go down because we are getting some new insurance cheaper that hasn't been factored in yet. So I know it's gonna go down by like 200, so 2,300. And so you just pop the numbers in, and then it goes, okay, well, you not worry about this, but okay, now we've got, see, look, there's 1,200 left over at the end of this. So okay, let's up this to 200. Let's up this to 200, and let's up the fund. So it's what's good is it's so quick to be able to go to your budget and go, okay, now I know this has changed, so this goes up, this is where we can kind of deploy those resources. So then I can say, oh, let's spend a bit more on Amazon and clothes or whatever, a bit more house stuff, and with this is an example of like the monthly tracker that I set up. I know it seems a little bit too detail oriented, but when you really want to just make sure you're on top of everything, literally like for the month we'll put like the item, the cost, and then this is the budget number. Then basically we'll have and this is just a hypothetical one. It's not related to the actual budget. And it minuses it down, and so once that gets to 0, it's much closer to like this right now. Once that gets to 0, you're out. So I think this helps reinforce how a lot of small things really add up really quickly. You think, oh, $20 here, $25 here, $30 here. Before you know it, you spent $400. It's crazy. It's amazing how your brain can just kind of array, it just puts blinders around you, and it's like, yeah, I'm just gonna keep spending. So let's go back to the presentation. I'm gonna I can share this, but honestly, what's probably more useful is this link. I'm gonna send everyone because this has like about 50 different budgets, and I send this to a lot of people on the program. And they're all templates where you throw the numbers in, and it spits out the budget. So it's in the chat box. So please copy this. If you don't find one that you like and you really want me to share my one, I will totally do that. But you'll probably find a better looking one in this link that I just put in the chat box. So what I really hope for people who are joining this today is, there's still a few more slides to go through. We're really through the meat and potatoes of the presentation, as it were. Is never too late to start budgeting. What I hope is if don't do any budgeting at all, that today is the first day that you start thinking about it, and you are able to put a little bit of time each month into understanding the income, the expenses, tracking those, keeping track of those each month, looking at statements, and getting into that mindset of getting the control, staying on top of them, and doing it regularly. Doing it, I think once a month is more than enough. We're all busy, but at the end of each month, it's such a useful thing to do, is to spend an hour, if you can, just sitting there going through the statements. And it doesn't have to be down to the penny, but just kind of a rough, to the nearest $10 we're talking here, and just figure out, okay, this is what I thought I spent, this is what I spent, and making sure and kind of categorizing everything in your head, and it'll start becoming second nature to you. So it's that's the kind of thing I'm hoping. We talked about late fees, set up auto pays. If you haven't, please set up auto pays. It's such an easy way to get both a negative credit score and really hurt your finances, because they throw all kinds of fees at you. Auto pay for credit cards, auto pay for bills. If they have that option, do it. So and Torion, if you don't budget but try to meet a quota, I'm not sure 100% what you mean by that, but I mean, if you can jump, if you're able to talk, Tori, I know you might be working.
Hey, how you doing? I'm able to talk.
Hey, yeah. So what was the question?
So I don't budget. I try to make a quota every month. By my business is probably a little different from everybody else's business and everything. So one of my goals is, if I can make this quote every month, I'm able to, I guess it's still considered to be budgeting, but I'm able to put money to the side and still, function as if nothing's even, like stopping anything. So my goal is always to make a quota every month.
Yeah, and that's absolutely fine. And if you're able to do that and still, save and do all, meet the obligations and have enough money to do all the fun stuff as well, you can do that. But I still think even in that situation, I would still just try and have a written budget if you can, because you might find, okay, I might be able to save even more, or there's certain stuff that I was buying that I'm really not sure, like, oh, like, did I want that? Did I want that subscription? It's good kind of best practice to go through, and for the business too, it's also something that I'd recommend doing with the business as well, because it's going to help you produce accurate financial statements. And Ramesh is saying here, so the process that you set your quota, was it based on a budget, or you have a number in mind and you just know that's the number?
Well, it's a number in mind. Like for instance, let's just say if I want to make 40,000 a year, I'll set a quota for each month in order to make that gross. Because like you say, some months are slower than others and everything, and some months are, high demand. So with that being said, I focus on the most needed part of my transportation is weddings. And wedding
Mhm.
budgets are way different than just say somebody need a ride to the airport, if somebody wants to do like a ride for their kids and everything. So what I have learned is if I set a certain quarter at certain parts of the year, that I can actually reach what I'm trying to reach at the end of the year.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, if that's what's working for you, so totally fine. But yeah, I'd still recommend just the process of looking through what the spending has been and keeping track of it.
Mm-hmm.
Just it's good practice. It's and it's also the kind of thing that's good for doing with the business too,
Mm-hmm.
and helping understand income and expenses for the business. But you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised, what you find doing that. But also, you might find, okay, there's actually even more investments I can make, or there's stuff I can redirect towards more savings, more investments. So it's still something I would do, even if you feel like you are
Mm-hmm.
meeting all these obligations and necessities.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'd still recommend it. I recommend it to everybody. It's a
Uh,
really it's a really I think beneficial thing to do, and a
mhm.
good skill set to develop. So definitely.
Okay, no problem.
Um, Anybody else have anything they wanted to share? I sent that link in the chat box so I think, for me, as I said at the beginning of this, and I'm going to say it again, for those of you, my aim for this session is that for those of you who have a budget, I'm hoping, the action point will be, okay, this month, I'm going to take a look at that budget and I'm going to update it. I'm going to spend an hour. There's probably not much more than that. It doesn't take that long. I'm just going to update it. I'm going to look through some spending and just make sure it's up to date. For those of you who have never budgeted before or feel like it's been a really long time, um, then I would get a template, and you can use mine. I'll send out the link in my email tomorrow with the video and the presentation to both of these. The one I just put in here, and then my budget. And you can look through that, choose the one you like the look of, and start with income. Like I said at the beginning of this presentation, start with income, figure out what that net number is. Once you got that, then look at expenses. And it's really easy to start with the core expenses because everybody knows what their rent and mortgage is, I hope. Usually know what the utilities, obviously water and energy, unless you have level billing, you just have to know what, like we're going through that right now. We've never had this house in the summer, and we have no idea what the bills are looking like. They were fine a few months ago, like everyone's, and now they're horrendous. So we're just kind of estimating what the heat the electricity charge is going to be. So sometimes you have to just do a best guess and see what happens. It's not it's a science to a point, and then it becomes an art form. So if you haven't done, if you've not done much budgeting, don't worry. It's never too late to start. It's a skill that you can develop at any point. But I think it's a really good opportunity right now in the program to start. And certainly, I think something that I've certainly told the other mentors that they should be encouraging you to budget more frequently, and at least once a month as part of the program, because it just, as I said, it feeds into everything. Good budget, it feeds into your personal finances, but it also feeds into the business. A good business budget, that feeds into good personal finance. So the better you get at both, the more on top of things you'll be for both your personal finances, your family finances, and your business. So I think that's really everything that I wanted to get across today. Thank you so much for joining this evening. Lovely to see everyone. I hope you're still engaged. I know Shantiona's because her camera's on, but I hope everyone else is. Thank you for all the questions and comments. Oh yeah, there are people in the chat box. Good. There's a few of you who are still paying attention. That's good. That's good to see. You liked it? Okay, you're very welcome. I hope this is useful. I hope this will be a useful reflection point for big change.
And thank
Hi,
you.
Gwen. Thanks,
Hey,
Gwen. Good to see you.
send me that template. I'm working on my
will.
budget this month. Man, I'm doing pretty good. I stood out
I'll
the
send
school
tomorrow.
30 days.
Oh,
30 days.
nice.
Yes. I'm so proud of myself.
I'm very impressed.
It's fast,
Very
faster
impressed.
than
Well,
another 30 days.
I'm looking forward to our mental meetings, Gwen. It's gonna,
Okay.
I'm excited to hear about all your successes. So keep an eye out for that budget email I'll send tomorrow with the templates and everything, so you'll have it.
Okay, great. And look, tomorrow from 10 to 2, I'm at the VA doing the cancer event. So can we do it probably around 9?
Let me just check.
Or either I can do it
Yeah.
out, you can see what I'm doing. If 11 is
Yeah.
11's okay. Let's keep it at 11.
Yeah, I have
We
us
can-
down for 11 tomorrow, I
Yes.
believe.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'll give
Okay.
you a call then. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you. Have a good
everybody.
day.
Take care. You'll have a great evening.
You do too. Have a greater one.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right.